So I just want to say thanks a lot to begin off here with Dave for doing a lot of the effort and the behind the scenes work with the Three Phases coaching clinic. I know when you tend to be the head coach of an organization, a lot of time you get credited for things that you aren't really the person that's the lead of, and I just want to take this time to show my gratitude to Dave for everything he's done to put these clinics on, especially during this time of with COVID and the whole pandemic and people having to be home and by themselves a lot more. So thanks to Dave for doing this. So like you already kind of talked about, is that my goal is to create a little bit of a discussion during this clinic. And I know some guys will have their cameras on and some guys will have their cameras off. I invite you to turn them on, and at least I know that I'm hopefully talking to somebody. And also we'll be using the chat functions to make sure that you guys have that open. But basically just kind of quickly introduce myself. I've been the head coach of the Regina Thunder here for 7 years. I'm going into my 8th season. And I've also had the opportunity to play for the Regina Rams and also the Regina Thunder in their inaugural season. With that, I've had about 20 years worth of coaching. I coached the RMF, high school. I coached Team Saskatchewan, also at the junior level, and even had the opportunity to work with the University of Regina Rams as their marketing coordinator. Up and above that as well is that I've been married for 14 years, trying hard to make it to 15 here. We'll see what happens here during this COVID times. She's probably ready for me to leave the house. And I also got two boys, twin boys, Matthew and Chase, who are pretty active in hockey, baseball, and football, and also guitar. And I've had the privilege and the opportunity to coach them in all their sports as well. So that's been near and dear to my heart, because when you are a football coach, you tend to be away from your family quite a bit, and having the opportunity to coach them in other sports has been a way for me to connect with them. And then lastly, kind of the direction we're going with this talk is that I'm sure, there's a lot of football coaches that are teachers. There's a lot of football coaches that maybe even do this full time. So they're able to do a lot of professional development, and maybe that's geared right towards the game of football. And for myself, I've been pretty lucky. I work for Pfizer Canada, a pharmaceutical company, and I started off in the sales force in southern Saskatchewan, traveling all around to all the small rural areas. And then I had the opportunity to work all Saskatchewan for about a year or two, which was great because I could go to Wynyard or Unity or wherever to try to recruit some kids, or at least let them know that the Thunder exists. And then also had the opportunity to take over more in a management role for Western Canada. And I was working from Southwest Ontario to the island. And that's when I started to realize that being young and full of energy can only take you so far, but at some point you need to develop some skill sets that are going to allow you to improve your management of your time and ensure that you are getting the tasks that are needed to get done. And recently I just went from that role, and now I'm currently the healthcare optimization manager for Alberta, Saskatchewan, and somewhat Manitoba. And I love this role. I also love the title. It sounds pretty good. But the one thing with Pfizer is that they're constantly doing lots of professional development skills and clinics and all that. And that's where this kind of was built off of. And we've actually taken what I've learned from some of the stuff with Pfizer to the Regina Thunder. And so, for example, a few things that we've done in the past is that we developed a business plan that we felt that would allow us to make sure that things are organized and operating to its full capacity, and also to enable the people that are volunteer organization to be organized. We've also used a lot of different techniques to develop a vision, pillars and team goals to make sure that everyone is connected together and working in the right direction. Also working at yearly cycles, just not just for the organization standpoint of when we're going to have spring camp and fall camp, et cetera, but more importantly, how much we should be engaging our players and at what times throughout the year. And recently just did a course on situational leadership that we've always kind of taken some time to talk about each year, because obviously you're going to deal with a lot of players within your organization, and you have to look more at the individual and the situation that they are in. And I think that's something that we've stolen from the business world and now brought into our organization. And this year, our goal was on time management. So what I wanted to do just right off the bat here, open up my chat here as well. I'm not sure where I put it, but I'm hoping that you guys can post into the chat some of the things that you do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis that like any kind of activity. So it could be kids hockey, it could be obviously work or school, etc. Okay, so I'm just playing around with this because I'm losing a few different things here with my controls, but we got it under control now. So some of the things that we kind of found, like when talking to different people, is that you might have a list of 25 different things that you have going on throughout the week. And somebody that I said like a normal life, maybe a guy that's not coaching football or volunteering their work or volunteering as much. Some of the priorities might be, family first, and they might have a whole bunch of different things put into that bucket. Health might be something higher up on the totem pole, or work and friends, or friends and work, whichever sort of comes together for you first, and also volunteering. But when you're a football coach, you also have to add in that football aspect. And to me, like, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into the game to ensure that, everything's done appropriately and we're always on time with everything. I think there's a little bit of a delay here, but I appreciate you guys putting some things in there. I know Morris Sokol talked about lesson planning, teaching, coaching basketball. So coaching basketball, football, baseball for him, that I go underneath volunteer work. Brian Boyce talked about work, minor football and positional meetings right now with Regina Thunder. Pat Robko put in there teaching, halftime, coaching 2 sports, chasing 3 kids. So again, all those things probably fall underneath these buckets. And then in the football world, like I kind of put it where my things are, work, it should be family, football than work. But it tends when you're spending a lot of time with football, I tend to try to combine it together with my family. But work is something that you definitely need to keep on doing to keep paying the bills when you're just being a volunteer. But again, like, the football aspects tends to add a lot to our plates. So kind of quickly, like looking at this, here's a picture of, from work-wise, you got your family time, and then with your family time, also you got your spouse time. As part of that family time, you got to make sure you take care of your wife or your significant other. Then also you have your extended family, right? You guys spend time with your dad or the in-laws or cousins, and also have your friends that you got to spend some time and keep those relationships open. You got your volunteer work. For me, I've been able to coach hockey, and then also you're going to have the dog as well. You got to spend a little bit of time with him as well. When it comes to the football coaching reality, is that there's a lot of things that are going on with that. And the first one that I quite enjoy quite a bit is just being on the field and practicing with the boys. You also got your game days, which also is something that we always look forward to and something that we're working towards. Always striving to make sure that we're successful on that game day. But up and above that, that's just not it, just practice and games. You also got to do recruiting. You got to do fundraising. You got your workouts. You got your camps that you're putting on. You got your meetings. You got your volunteer work, especially when you're a nonprofit organization relying on the community for support. You got your professional development. You got more fundraising. You got more community work. You got more workouts. You got more meetings. You got more fundraising. You got more team engagement or with the alumni. You got more recruiting, more meetings, more player engagement, more workouts, more meetings, more fundraising, more camps, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and we're doing some things completely different. So again, like the football life, as soon as you add football into the mix, there's a lot of things that transpire and adds to your time. So basically, like for me, like this is what this whole presentation is going to be about. Just to begin with, I know myself, I just kind of talked about when I was flying over the country and working. At some point there, I'm like, I'm not as young and energetic as I was before, or maybe I've taken more on. But the bottom line is that I need to start studying about how I could better my time. And that started off with me finding 3 different mentors that I look up to. And so the first guy is Paul Harrison. So Paul's been like a long-time coach here in Regina, working with Lobolas, where they've always had a very successful high school football team. But he's also coached U16, the Regina Riot, constantly always volunteering his time. And he's a lawyer. And then you got Morgan Bunce, who works at Farm Credit Corp, and he's climbed up the ladder quite a bit there, and his people managing, also taking a lot of care of a lot of their technology. But Morgan coached with the Regina Thunder, but he also recently was the head coach of the Regina Riot. And then you have Jeff Stusek. So Jeff Stusek is the CEO of ISC. He's working in, I don't know if you call it the CEO of the RMF or the president of the RMF. He's been working with Team Saskatchewan. He's been a mentor to a lot of different people. He's got 2 young boys that are playing at an elite level of football, and he's also a coach with the Regina Rams as their special teams coordinator and also receiver coach. So when I kind of look at these guys, the first thing I think of Paul Harrison, of course they have more than just what I'm saying, but Paul Harrison is really good at managing his energy levels. He's always even keeled, realistic, and positive. When I think of Morgan Bunce, I look at a person that lives a very scheduled life, and he's always trying to find ways to simplify or batch things together. And then Jeff Stusek, really, he's the one that should be doing this presentation. He is the master of time and energy management. And the one thing that I kind of take away from him, besides a million things in this particular area, is that he's very, very protective of his time. And he might be time boxing where he's got, say, 2 hours dedicated to breaking down special teams film, but if you're to call him, he's going to be very protective of his time and be very particular of what time he gives you. So he'll say, I'll talk to you at 7:02 to 7:07 or whatever it is. He tries to be very distinct with the exact times that he's going to be utilizing. So those are 3 guys that I look up to. So the first thing I just want to kind of talk about is owning your time. So if you find that you're running out of time or you're having issues with that, the bottom line is that it's your time. You're the one that has to take this under control and be accountable for it. And when I think about my time and other people's time, is that your time and energy is worth millions. So protect this asset. It's important for you to understand what your goals are, what is your purpose, and stay focused on those. And let your purpose guide you in how you spend your time. Because how and what you focus on does matter, especially to you. So time management. So time management isn't just about cramming more into your schedule, even though I used to think that. It's about making smarter, more purposeful choices with the hours you have. And so tonight's talk is going to be about harnessing your energy and focus. It's going to be about defeating distractions, taking charge of your productivity, and overcoming time pressures. And I'm going to do my best to try to talk more about bring it into the football world compared to the business, but hopefully you can take some of the stuff and apply it to your teaching and business life or even home life as well. So in the chat group, I'm going to try to open this up again here. What I would like you guys to put in there is basically what creates a satisfying and productive day for you. So basically, it's been a long day. You've gone home, more Sokolo's in Wynyard, sitting on his deck, sun's beating down. He's had a cold, refreshing drink, and he's reflecting on his day. What's going to give more Sokol or Jerry Friesen or Kyle Stroder when they were looking upon their day? When do they know they've actually had a great day, a very productive day? So Jerry Friesen said, meeting small goals in the big picture. Morris Sokol said, being able to balance my school life with my family life, which is obviously very, very important and tricky to do sometimes. Not bringing your issues at work home. Dave Jackson and some of the coaches in that room there talked about accomplishing everything on my list, and you'd be successful. So for example, if you have a to-do list, if you're able to cross everything off, that's great. Clear your emails. Perhaps from a football standpoint, you're able to cut up your film for the next day early or that night early. You're able to recruit some new players. You're able to finalize your off-season workout plans, whatever it is. For me personally, it's about finishing a task or moving along a certain project. And that's where I kind of felt like my most satisfaction was. But upon like studying and stuff and reflecting even more, really what it is, it's about like when your energy and workload are well matched. So if you have like a lot of energy and you're really dialed in, and during that moment in time, you're going through Facebook and going doing all your social media stuff, and then later on when you get tired, then all of a sudden you try to do focus and work on like a great project that you have to struggle through. Instead of taking 30 minutes to do, it might take an hour. Like you're not going to feel as good. So really, I know if you think about, there's times like when you have low energy, it's probably a good time to do a routine task or take a break and do the social media thing. But when you have high energy, it's all about maybe doing some more of the harder to do or the more detailed tasks. So for me now, upon learning about surfing my energy waves, it's now about matching my energy to what needs to be done and knowing that I capitalized on all hours in the day. And again, that comes to kind of protecting your time. So there's basically two things in this particular area when you're talking about harness energy and focus that I have found. And I'm sure that others will have more to add to it. But the first thing is like understanding when you're most productive. And the second thing is about surfing your energy waves. So when you're talking about like when are you most productive, you need to kind of figure out, and this could change over time, or it could be different in the preseason compared to the playoffs, is like, when are you most productive? Are you a morning person, or are you an evening person, or a night owl, or are you sort of like the norm where you're really focused and engaged, say from like 9 to 1, and you tend to peter down? But it's important for you to understand like when your biological peak time or energy waves are at the highest, because that's when you want to do your most difficult tasks. And with that, you want to surf your energy waves. It's okay to tucker out like around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It's okay to hit a wall around 4 or 5. It's just part of your day. And what happens is when you get up in the morning, you tend to, at some point, maybe it takes longer to get going, as it does for me. You wake up, you kind of peak, and then you drop a little bit. You'll drop, and then you'll kind of resurface again, and then you'll drop again to the rest of the night. So it's making sure, if you're going to do that, like identify 3 key goals that you want to accomplish for the day. You could have 10, but like take 3, so then you know that you've accomplished them. And with those 3s, what you need to do is start to prioritize when are you going to do those types of tasks. So if you're working on a project, or for example, like you need to game plan for your next upcoming game, you probably want to do it during the peak hour time. So you do it during your peak time, where if you have a time where you start to crash, that might be the time that you're just in data into huddle, or that's where you're kind of drawing up your plays for practice at night. You've already broken everything down. Now you're just sitting there drawing them up and capturing everything. So you need to understand when your peak time is and when your rebound time is, and prioritize when you're going to do certain projects. The other thing is that with your 3 goals, they don't have to all be at work or for work. They don't have to all be about football. What I kind of think is like, pick 3 goals that you want to accomplish that day, prioritize them, but make sure like 1 of them are for you. So like 2 for work, say 1 for football. And then the last thing is like, in regards to planning for your peak time, make sure you block the time that's your peak time from non-distraction. Like no one's allowed to come and break your flow. When your energy fails, pursue routine work, which I kind of already talked about, or let ideas simmer. So some things that you can do to try to refresh yourself and give yourself some energy is go for a walk, maybe connect with a colleague, maybe during that low time, you get on your social media for a little bit. They always talk about a healthy snack. Maybe we'll just go get some chips or whatever it is, but you want to try to have a healthy snack. Also, when your energy falls, this is where you want to do your routine work. So I already talked about tagging film. From a business standpoint, when I kind of start to hit a low, that's where I might spend time approving people's expense reports. I know that I have to make sure things are accurate, but it doesn't take as much mental capacity to do it. And then the other thing is like when your energy starts to fall, it's good to make sure you delay any kind of big time decisions, because the bottom line is that when you're tired, sometimes you just want to get things done, and you just let things that maybe don't meet your standards to go. And also people tend to become more biased and more unethical when they're tired. When your energy rebounds, which is the next part, so you hit that peak, you drop, when energy picks back up, again, that's a time that you can start to use more of your creative connections. And at that point, if I kind of put it as a note here, that's maybe where I to be drawing up my scout cards if I haven't already got a good idea of what the other team's doing. But this is where you want to start to do maybe not your top priority, but maybe your number 2 or 3. I don't know if there's any question as of yet, but that's the first part. I don't see any in the chat, so we should be pretty good. And if not, you can just unmute yourself and feel free to fire away. All right, so the next thing is that do you ever find that your mind is yanked by competing bids for your attention? And so like what I would like you guys to do is post in the chat is what sort of things pull you away from your current tasks or stops your flow. Some examples could be an email pop-up or phone alerts. I know, like for myself, as you're putting into the chat group here, is that for me, one of the things that I've had to stop during the day for sure, 100%, is doing any kind of social media in the morning. Like once I hit my peak time, no matter what, I can't do it because I'll waste all my time and energy surfing that, coming up with great ideas about meetings and this and that, and then what really matters, my most important tasks aren't getting done. So social media has been sort of a thing that screws up my day. People are very brought up about procrastinating, so that's good to know. I'll talk about that in a bit. In regards to other things that might distract them, they've got phone alerts, just pings, sounds that maybe distract you. I think the big thing is that right now, like for me, is social media. The second thing has actually been pretty interesting is that my wife and I are working from home together. And maybe we don't want to save this, Dave, but the thing is that what I found is that her peak time and my peak time for energy and for getting things done is definitely not the same time. And so I've had to be very protective of my hours. If I know that from like 9 to 12 is my peak time for getting a lot of work done, I know that at around 9 or 10, she always wants to come in and talk and disrupt me. So I know that right now, like COVID-19, my spouse has now become one of my distractions when I need it less. But the bottom line is distractions they're natural. They're even healthy. They're even healthy to lose focus. Let our minds wander, relax, process information, and dream a little bit. But you need to understand too is that when you come back, it might take you 20, 25 minutes to get back into the flow, depending how good you are at flipping the switch and tuning in and out. And every tiny action we kind of do, sending a text message, returning an email, can cause us to lose focus or flow. It might feel good. It might be a quick, good boost, but it definitely can derail you in the long run. Barry Rogers posting here, procrastination leads to semi-greatest accomplishments and longest nights, problems recovering the next day. There you go. Same issue. Dave Jackson and I were talking some football the other night, and we were up late drawing some X's and O's, and the next day, whew, I got to tell you, I don't have the same energy as I once did, but definitely learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, so everyone was kind of posting a lot of solutions, so that's great. So defeating distractions. So there's basically like 4 that I kind of brought up just to kind of talk about. One is like digitally declutter. For me, like right now, I used to have my phone. I'd be multitasking like crazy, texting guys, texting coaches, phoning sponsors, doing Pfizer work. And now like I just can't do that anymore. And I'm not 100% sure why, but like multitasking is say doesn't really exist. And that's one thing that I've had to work at trying to stop. But I've now removed my phone. I turn off my notifications. I turn off my alerts. If I have extra browsers pop up, that's something that I try to do. So they kind of talk about digitally decluttering. The other thing is reducing interruptions by establishing boundaries and managing your location. So what they kind of mean about that is like set your expectations, manage your location in regards to like how you're sitting, where you're at, where you're located, And if somebody does interrupt you, don't reward their behavior. It is not okay. If you're having a coaches meeting or you're by yourself and you're working on a project and the door's shut, for someone to open it up and disrupt you. And then also, like, there is times that you need to have those discussions or whatever, but if you're fully in there and people are aware of your expectations, don't reward their behavior. So I'll give you another example for me. Is that the Regina Thunder has a very rectangled coaches room. I'm a defensive coach. I'm a special teams coach. I'm not an offensive coach. I got an offense coordinator that I rely on, and he's my right-hand man. So, but the one thing is, because I spend so much time with the defense and with special teams and everybody else, is that I wanted to make sure that my seat was located with the offensive coaches, so I can get caught up to what's sort of happening throughout the practice. And so what ended up happening is that I sat away from the door at the end of the room with the offensive coaches. And part of the issue is that when I was sitting there, if somebody did need to see me very quickly, I would have to walk past everybody to get back out, or walk back in to get all the way back there. The other thing too is that if I'm in a meeting, a lot of people, or if I'm in film session, a lot of my support staff, they know if he's in a film session, they can't interrupt me. If we're in a coaches meeting, a lot of times they won't interrupt me. But when I was in that one particular spot, because my eyes were on the door, is that when people walked in, I automatically, of course, would look up towards the door. And because I'm now looking at them, they felt that I was inviting them in and allowing them to have that discussion with me during the coaches meeting. And so what I've done now is move my seat towards the door to the point that, for a couple of reasons, if somebody comes in or I need to deal with something very quickly, I now can get in and out of the room very quickly. And a lot of times I'm also like one of the last guys into the room. The other thing as well is that when somebody comes in, is that if we're in the middle of a discussion about rostering, or we're having a debate back and forth, it's just not the appropriate time for someone to come in and disrupt us. When they come in, is that my back is now towards them, and it's less inviting. It's less inviting. And I might quickly kind of glance at them and say, is it anything? And address whatever I need to address. But as soon as I'm done, I'll turn my back to them again. Maybe it sounds like I'm rude or whatever. But again, like, if you're trying to protect your time, you need to find ways to protect your time. And that's something that I'm currently doing right now. Other things they talked about is like office noise and activity around you affecting your concentration. So I love listening to music when I'm doing work. I know that when I'm doing a detailed project for Pfizer, or even creating this slide deck, for example, I can't have any podcasts or G-Funk playing in the background. I got to make sure that there's either no noise or some sort of white noise where there's like no verbiage, and maybe more instrumental type of music. So it's good to eliminate that. Procrastination is something that everybody kind of brought up during the chat group there, and I appreciate that. And part of the thing is that I know, like, right now there's 2 projects, one with work and one with Regina Thunder, that I'm procrastinating on, and I need to do, and I keep on putting it off for absolutely no reason, and then also it's tomorrow again. But the bottom line is that if you are procrastinating, you need to address the root cause of why you're doing it. You're avoiding the task for a reason, and it weighs on your mind. And when it weighs on your mind, it becomes a distraction. So you need to figure out why you're procrastinating, and more importantly, you need to develop a plan. And part of that is that you might have too much on your plate. But if you got too much on your plate and you feel overwhelmed to the point that you're suffering from paralysis, the big thing is, like, try to shrink your time frame from, say, a project that you need to work over a week. Use 1 day. Just get moving. Use 1 hour. If that doesn't work, use 10 minutes. Use 1 minute. Just get moving forward. And once you kind of get yourself into the flow, hopefully things will start to change. The other thing that I haven't fully got into and studied as of yet is that I know that Jeff Stusek talked about the urgent, important matrix during his talk. It's also known as the Eisenhower matrix. And this is something that you can use as well. And just like quickly kind of like talking about it, this is something that Eisenhower had used during the war because he had so many tasks and projects that are being put on his desk. And when you kind of look at it, the area that you want to spend the most amount of time in is the number 2 quadrant, the planning quadrant, which is not urgent and important. So the bottom line is that you're not racing, it's important and you're not wasting your time, but you also have time to put in the appropriate effort to do a great job. Now, there's going to be things where you have to do something urgently and importantly, and that's great because that's part of the show. Where you want to stay away from, though, is being in the not urgent, not important, and eliminate that from your task or give it to somebody else. Anything that's urgent but not important, you also need to start to think about, is that something maybe I can delegate to somebody else? So like from a football standpoint, we're trying to kind of figure out maybe some things that would fit into these categories. So as a special teams coordinator, I know that we have Jerry Friesen on here and Jeff Stusek and Dave Jackson. Yeah, we almost got all the special teams coordinators in Saskatchewan here. Is that we want to, in regards to urgent and important, is that it might be from a special teams coordinator standpoint, that might have to do with injuries. Because as soon as somebody's injured or they're not on your 45-man roster, that affects your depth charts and you need to deal with it right there and then. From a head coach's standpoint, something might be urgent and important, might have to do with like weather changes during practice, having to address things right away. Not urgent but important might be practice plan updates. You already got in your head about how you want things to go. Hopefully, this is well in advance, but it might kind of fall into that category. In regards to urgent, not important, from a head coach's standpoint, I got Dave Gates sitting here in a wineyard here. I'm not sure if that's Kelowna background or a Canuckamat background. But anyways, when it comes to equipment issues, okay, that's his thing. It is urgent, needs to be dealt with, not important to me. That's his job. Also maybe in practices with script changes, it urgently needs to be done, but it's probably something that I can delegate to my coordinators. And then the last thing, not urgent, not important, we kind of talked about like league rumors, speculations. We don't need any of that stuff, and somebody else can worry about that. Okay, any questions? We talked about procrastination, which is some of the things that came up. Feel free to unmute yourselves. It's all good. And if not, we'll move on. Okay. So this is where if you had your camera on like Dave Gates, I was gonna say, I was busy all day, but what did I really accomplish? How many times have you guys actually said that? So give me some thumbs up if you've ever felt like that, or put yes or no into the chat group. But I'm assuming that most of us have always had those days where you're busy nonstop from early in the morning until later in the evening. You're like, man, like what did I accomplish? So that's something that, again, slows us down and hampers us. So overcoming time pressure, dialing pressure down, and watch results rise. So the one thing is that you need to evaluate yourself and others by important work produced, not by long hours or always being available. And I think this is a key point. And something for myself is that in the past, I worked a lot of hours for Pfizer, a lot of hours for the Thunder. Haven't really taken care of myself as the way I should. And the bottom line is like, what did I really accomplish? Did I really accomplish the most important things, or did I put a lot of time and effort into projects or things that don't really matter? And the whole thing too, which I always kind of find funny, is that it's classic for football coaches to say, I was up at 5 a.m. and I put in 18 hours and blah, 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 right? It's sort of that badge of honor. And I remember I went to a training camp one time and got to spend the week there. And there's no doubt pro coaches, college coaches, well, even volunteer coaches, if you truly love the game, you're going to put in thousands, tens of thousands of hours in every year. But what I found interesting is that these guys that were boasting and were in this badge of honor about being there at 5 a.m. and ready to go for practice, when we went in to watch film around 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, they're falling asleep. They're in the chairs falling asleep. So the thing is that maybe you're just not utilizing your hours appropriately as you should. And so I just kind of got a little bit of a laughter from that. The other thing too is like with long hours, like sometimes you need to get help. And so for me, for example, with the Regina Thunder, is that I think we've done a good job of recruiting like the right guy to be our equipment manager, the right person to be our physiotherapist, the right person to help with recruiting, the right people to do our strength and conditioning, and the coaches that I'm able to delegate a lot of things, and we can get more done with more help. This isn't always the case everywhere, but the bottom line is that you need to make sure that you hire or partner with solid people or people that you trust. And when you do that, you need to set the environment, the expectations, the rules and timelines, and hold them accountable. Make sure that everyone's on the same page. But also you need to make sure, as if you're delegating things off, is that you got to give people freedom to manage when, where, and how things get done if you set the parameters for them to work within. And you need to keep a healthy balance. Another thing too with long hours and making sure you do important work is use transition days on either side of vacations. So if it's the weekend, maybe Fridays are the day that you kind of clear up your emails, so then on Monday you're good to go. Or when you come back from vacation, maybe start, let everybody know you're coming back on Tuesday, and take that Monday to have some downtime to clean up emails and get sort of somewhat caught up with what's going on. Okay, addressing time sinks by figuring out the root cause and considering multiple solutions. So sync times, I had to really kind of think about this, but basically they're time drainers or time wasters. And, you need to identify what they are. You need to clarify what they are, and you need to make sure that you get everyone moving in the right direction. There's either something like with a bad process or an ineffective relationship or a low value task that are being your peak times or your times being used for. So what I kind of think about that as a coach on here is that with the Thunder, if we're going to have a coaches meeting, do we need to have that coaches meeting? Do we need to meet live, or could we meet virtually? It's something to think about. The other thing too is you need to also see there's always those token people. I had a few people with the Regina Thunder where I worked all day and I'm racing to get to the field. I got a million things on my mind. I got to finalize some things with the roster and talk to so-and-so and talking to so-and-so. And all of a sudden, as you're going to the coach's room or wherever you got to meet with the head physio, all of a sudden somebody pops in front of you and cuts you off. And all of a sudden you're just having small talk and wasting time, where you could be doing a lot more things. Or you get engaged into a long conversation that's going nowhere. Or the other thing when I kind of think about time sinks too is that maybe you got guys that are like energy vampires, and even though you're full of energy, as soon as you walk into the building to get things going and have a great practice, you got Mr. Negativity coming up to you and bringing you down, which all of a sudden he's wasting your time. All of a sudden something you need to address, but more importantly, he's bringing your energy levels down and slowing you throughout the process. So time sinks are something that you need to think about. Honestly, you need to spend time with people and have good one-on-one conversations back and forth, and bring that personal side to everything. And then also one of the best things about coaching football, outside of being on the field and doing the X's and O's and the skills, is hanging out with the boys. So you definitely need to have situations like that, but you also need to make sure you protect yourself where small talk and long conversations that are going nowhere take over your daily routines. Okay, examining habits. So you definitely don't want to copy what I do with that. I think there's a lot better people to probably mentor yourself or copy yourself around. I just say like one thing with this is that my best year coaching is that I had a guy named Derek Lamer. He was a cop. After practice, he would come into the coaches meeting. As soon as the coaches meeting was done, boom, he was gone. And I started saying every time he leaves, I'm leaving. And most guys know that I'm always one of the last guys to leave all the time from the clubhouse. But my best year coaching is when I got into a routine. And I think Dave Rogers and Pat Robko already brought that up. But my routine is like, when that dude leaves, I'm leaving. He's got young kids. I got young kids. And he was a good guy for me to follow. And part of that routine is that when I left early, I got to go home. And when I got home, I was able to redo my practice plan or update my practice plan for linebackers, special teams at that time, that night. And I knew that the film most likely back then wasn't up yet, but I knew it'd be up by 6 a.m. So I take care of all my practice plans and make sure I was absolutely organized and on the ball. And then when I wake up early in the morning, I'd hit up that film, and then I'd have a great day at work with Pfizer and be with my family. So again, that was the best year that I ever coached. And it's because of discipline and getting myself into a routine. And it's something that I definitely want to work towards doing that again. Okay, so it's not always about time management. It's also about energy management. We've talked about that. Paul Harrison and a lot of studies, they always talk about remaining calm will increase your willpower and bring the excitement when you need. So for me, again, it goes back to like, who are you spending your time with and what are you spending your time on? And you gotta spend your time with certain people to develop that relationship, but you also need to go, okay, like I'm staying here late at night. Do these guys have kids? Do these guys have to work early in the morning? Are we living the same lifestyle? And just keep that in the back of your head, right? Is this where I should be, or should I be doing something else? And for me, it's kind of brings a lot of great, more of awareness. Now, of course, you can stay and have a beer and hang out with the young guys or whatever it is, but also know that you're making choices, and what comes with choices is actions or consequences. I won't say it in a negative way, but if you're up late at night and you got to get up early in the morning, most likely you're going to be tired, vice versa. Okay, restoring, catching up on neglected areas, or trying something new. So something new for me, professional development, time management, something that also I worked on, restoring your energy levels. A great story with that would be Frank McChrystal. So Frank McChrystal was the head coach of the Regina Rams for a long time. Everybody probably knows who he is. But anyways, the one thing about Frank McChrystal, when I worked with him for 8 years, is that he used to get away from the office and disappear for a while. I never really knew where he was going. And but he always came back full of energy, super organized, and ready to rock and roll. And I remember one time I had to go meet with a sponsor, and I met them at downtown at the Cornwall. And there's Frank. He's in the Cornwall. He's having a coffee. And the bottom line is that he would take time once a week or twice a week, whatever it was, just to get away from the office, get away from the people in the football world. And maybe at that point, he'd be reading over some book that he wanted to share with the players the next couple of days, or just to like clear his mind and get ahead of everything. So I thought that was something that was pretty darn good. Reflect on your days and use those insights to develop good habits. I think that's self-explanatory. And I don't know if there's any other questions before I move on, but again, you can just unmute yourself, fire away, or post in the chat. So Dave Rogers made the comment that I feel that I'd be a much better assistant coach now that I've been a head coach for quite a while. I agree with you as well. I think I'd be a hell of an assistant coach to somebody as well. You learn all that different tidbits of what those guys are going through and how you can better support them. Okay, take charge of your productivity. So be intentional with your time. And I want you to kind of think about these 4 areas. So the first thing is being intentional with your time, is being structured. But before I get into that in more depth, I want to talk about organizational strategy. So I think with organizational strategy and being intentional with your time is like having a plan of action, having an organized, detailed strategy of what you're going to do throughout the year and how things are going to go. So like for me, it's like, how do I get the Regina Thunder to the national caliber level? Or how do we make sure at Pfizer, for me, is like, how am I going to make sure that I'm at a top tier level with doing my job? And what that is like, some other questions to kind of think about with that is like, what are the areas that I need to focus in to accomplish that? How can I structure my coaching staff and support staff to help us get there? Do I need more coaches? Do I need less coaches? Do I need to better improve their understanding of their roles? Also with organizational strategy as well, being intentional with your time, are there things that I can delegate? Are there experts that I can bring in? And more importantly, like, how do I bring everybody together working towards a common cause? And having an organizational strategy or a business plan with a vision, pillars, job responsibilities, and also expectations can go a long way with bringing everybody together. And so with Regina Thunder, we've actually done that where we looked at recruiting and workouts and brought in people that can help us out with that. Then you also got your team goals and time frames. So when I'm talking about team goals in regards to taking charge of your productivity, is that I'm not talking about game day goals or practice goals or strength and conditioning, how many reps can I throw up type of goals. I'm talking about like what things can you do to create value and how can you improve on those things. So for example, what does your team or organization need to improve on? What does your organization already do well that you can work to get better with? And so you need to think about like how we do that and timeframes that we can work with. So for example, the Regina Thunder, like in 2017, we had a lot of injuries. And with that, I used to phone our guys all the time, text them, tweet them, snap them, Insta them, DM them, whatever it is, to get on them to show up to workouts. And I said, I'm done with that. It's a complete waste of my time. If guys aren't putting the time and effort into things, they just don't want to be here. And so it kind of became my mindset. Why am I missing out being with my kids, chasing these guys down, constantly texting them and emailing them and pushing them? And you still need to do that. And that's where I kind of came up with this thing about the power of numbers. We'll recruit high numbers, and then we'll see what happens down the road. If guys aren't working out, maybe they'll get beat out. Maybe they won't. But that's on them now, not me. Either which way, we kind of put a lot of ownership onto these guys. And with that, what started to happen is that they got to pick and choose if they wanted to say be at level 10 or go to Evolution Fitness, or if they didn't want to do anything. Either which way, the ownership was on them and things went fairly well. But in 2017, I remember clearly we ended up having a lot of injuries. And the other thing is that we had a lot of guys just doing their own thing, which some guys right now are going, well, what do you think would happen? But the bottom line is that we tried something and we had too many injuries. So with that, we came to the conclusion for us to get better as an organization and being intentional with our time is that we now need to make sure our guys are working out, and we got to hold their hands, and we need to get bigger, faster, stronger, and we need to make sure that guys are intentionally signing up to be together as a team and bonding and sweating and bleeding. No excuses. So what our end goal was is to make sure that we get in better shape, have more accountability with less injuries. And how do we accomplish this? What we found is that if we were to partner up with Level 10 and give them access to our players, if you build, they will come, but also like Level 10 took a lot of ownership with this. And now instead of us having a coach that brought guys together for Sunday runnings that make sure we came together, or Tuesday sort of fit classes, we now are doing stuff together 4 or 5 times a week. Honestly, I don't have the time to do that, but I was able to find a company and people within that company that we definitely trusted. So again, that kind of goes back to team goals and being intentional with my time and knowing that I don't have the time and using my time to drive people there and then have them take care of those guys. Professional development, again, take charge of productivity. The reason I put that there basically had to do with the fact is like a lot of times we'll go, hey, I just want to get better at football. And so we go on the interweb and we're just like Googling and searching for different things, or you sign up for X-Note Labs or footballchat.com, like whatever it is, and you get like 4,000 emails and everything in there looks sexy, and you're like, I want to learn about that. I want to learn about this. And all of a sudden, you just have that paralysis by analysis by seeing too much there. So the thing is, like, if you want to actually grow and get better, pick like 1 or 2 things and really focus on them. And this is something that Dave Jackson is extremely good at. And this awesome season, he probably learned 100 new things or studied 100 different things. But he started off with 1, then 2, then 3. And so as he kind of did that, he found more things that he wanted to improve on. And so, for example, with myself with time management, I've now done this. And now the next thing I want to do is look at that urgent, important matrix and see how I can incorporate that into my work life. So be intentional with what you're trying to grow on. And there you go, personal payoffs. I think at the end of the day, does what you're doing with time and effort wise, does it pay off for you personally or also all for your organization? You need to make sure that there's a value with that. Acing your top priorities. So this is some of the things here that I think can help people out. And some things that I need to do better. So acing your top priorities. These are kind of skill set to take charge. So the first thing is about preloading your calendar. So when I think of Jess Dusick, I think he's probably got a preloaded calendar that takes you from probably 10 years ago to 10 years from now. But he'd be preloading his calendar in regards to, okay, like during these days from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., I know I'm breaking down special teams. From 11 to 1, I know that I have lunch meetings with IST. So from 11 to 1, this is IST time. Or 11 to 5, this is IST time. At 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock, this is RAM time, where I'm going to finish up my practice plans for that day. And 6 till whenever at night, 10, 11 at night, I'm dedicating that to being on the field with the boys and working, whatever it is. So try to preload your calendar maybe for the month. Like this day is dedicated to football, this day is dedicated to whatever it is, professional development, et cetera, or time frames within. The other thing is like having an accountability partnership. So basically what you do is you find somebody that you mutually agree with to coach each other and have personalized goals that you would share with each other. That would be very minute and defined. And it's probably something that you respect and that they can kind of hold you accountable, but then you can also hold them accountable. So having that accountability partnership. So something that I did, and I want to do again, is that when I was first hired as the head coach of the Regina Thunder, I felt it was important for myself to get 3 different coaches. So I had one coach was Jeff Stusik actually, and he's a guy that I could talk a lot more about football stuff with, but also had that business standpoint as well. And he helped us with our development of our vision and our pillars and even my own coaching philosophy. So that's the first things I didn't hire him, I guess. I voluntold him or volunteered him to help me out. But I had Jeff Stusik. At that time, he was the CEO of ISC and also the head coach of Campbell. The next guy I went is I wanted to get, so Jeff was my football guy. The next guy I wanted to get was a business guy. And we didn't talk about football. We talked about business and more importantly, interpersonal relationships. And so I went and I asked Trevor Bolquist from Bennett Dunlop to be my mentor. And he was fantastic. He's a guy that gave me a book called Driven. Fantastic read. It's a very simple read. So it was great for me. But he's a guy that I go and talk about sort of like organizational things, but more importantly, like personal relationships with players and coaches, etc. And then the other person I developed a relationship with, and it was important for me at this time, is that I wanted to find a board member with the Regina Thunder that actually most likely, some of the time, if not most of the time, had a different perspective than what I had. I do have strong ties to our board of our directors, a good solid working relationship, but there have been guys in the past that just have a different mindset. And that guy for me was Chuck Toth. And so it was important for me to develop a relationship with him because a lot of things before we went in front of the board of directors or before we had meetings with other people, we could hash out a lot of debates or disagreements or different thought processes so we knew where each other was coming from. And allowed me to grow and see a different perspective from a board of director or a guy that's been involved with the football community in a long time. So those are the 3 guys that I picked. I now need to redo that again. And so you never know. Might be short to happen a few different guys. Some other skill sets, routine work. Some good things to do with that is just power through routine work. You don't need to be full of piss and vinegar or full of energy. When you get to routine work, it's probably less thinking for yourself. So it's a good time to do lower tasks. But when it comes to routine work, some good things again is about time boxing and having set times. So my set time with work for doing expense reports, I know in my day I tend to crash around 2 to 3. So I'm going to time box that in once a week on Thursdays. So time boxing. The other thing is that what Morgan Bunce is really good at doing is batch processing. So batch processing is about doing things, similar tasks together. So again, I go back to doing expense reports. I wouldn't do them one off. I would do them all together at the same time. For example, in football, if you're drawing up scout cards, maybe you want to do them all at one time. Because if you're switching back and forth to different tasks, you're essentially multitasking and causing yourself to slow down a bit. By the way, I always thought I was a master multitasker. Now I realize that I'm not. But it took a good 10 years to realize that. And then the other thing is making a game out of the task. Everybody knows about Tom Sawyer. Great story where he's whitewashing a fence. And obviously that's probably the worst thing ever. And through his excitement and making a game out of it, he was able to get other people to join him to the point he was actually sitting underneath a tree watching people do the work for him. So there's two things about that, about bringing excitement to your job, but also making a game out of the task and making it fun and exciting. And when you do that, other people tend to want to join. Multitasking, I've already addressed that, so skip that. And then protecting your time. One thing that's a good skill set is to say no. I'm the worst at that. I barely say no to any kind of task. I always want to be involved in whatever. But the bottom line is, like, is it your job? Is it a valuable use of your time? What are you giving up to do that task? Or is it part of your prioritization? What are you giving up to do that task, and is it worth it? And also, like, redesign the task so you get a payoff. Condense or eliminate certain aspects as well. Ask to complete the task if you're having issues at a different date. So you can also renegotiate things from others. Like, I'm not willing to take that task on, but I'll work in these 1 or 2 areas. You got to work in the other areas, whatever it is. You can negotiate with other people. Okay, we made it. The conclusion. So if there's anything that I kind of took away over the last little while here, is like, one, the only person that is responsible for you and your time management is you. As much as I like to blame my wife for causing me to fall off task and get slowed down, that's not the case. It's my fault. I'm the one that needs to make sure that I time things out throughout the day. And the only person that can do that is myself. So, like, own your time. The other thing is, like, surf your energy waves. Understand when you got tons of energy, understand when you're going to crash, and understand when you're going to have that second boost throughout the day. And prioritize your tasks around that, organize your day around that. And I think you're going to get a lot more things accomplished. During your most productive time of day, eliminate distractions. Eliminate your distractions. So if you know between 9 and 12, and this is the time that I can get these projects done, put yourself in a situation that you're not going to get distracted unless they have to. It could be a simple sign on the door, do not disturb. You could have your back to the door. You could be going into a completely different room in the basement of your building that you're in. Either which way, make sure that you protect your time and eliminate distractions. Being overwhelmed or having a lot on your plate. We already talked about the prioritization with the urgent, important matrix. The Eisenhower matrix is something that you can definitely do. But the one thing that I kind of find as well as when I get overwhelmed is, instead of looking at 1,000,001 tasks that we kind of talked about at the very beginning of this presentation, is start to batch it together. Look at the bigger picture. And then all of a sudden, maybe you might be able to breathe a little bit more. And also, if you have problems getting going because you're procrastinating, besides prioritizing, maybe start off small. Go like for 5 minutes here. I got to push myself and have the willpower to work on this thing, and hopefully you'll get your momentum going. And the other thing is practice saying no. The other thing as we kind of move forward here is examine your daily habits. What you do during the off season might be different during training camp, which might be different during the regular season, which might be different during the playoffs. You need to examine your daily habits. It's more of a fluid situation and adjust accordingly. And then the last thing is about developing skill sets. We talked about preloading your camera or calendar, time boxing, batching things together, your office setup, and being upfront with your expectations. You know, when people understand, like, hey, like I'm going into a film session right now, and you're not allowed to come in and interrupt me when I'm with the players. Or if you come into a coach's meeting and I don't turn around to look at you, it means that we are in some sort of important discussion during that time. So anyways, I hope that there's some tidbits here that guys can take away from. I've enjoyed
learning about it. But Dave, if there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah, this has been great, Scott. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your learning over the years and specifically this off season as well. I know for me, and we talked about this before, I love your attention to surfing the energy waves, right? That's something that I find myself a skill that I'm trying to develop, you know, match and prioritize my tasks and match them with my anticipated high points of energy, low points of energy throughout the days or throughout the week. So, you know, when you're talking about that, that's something that hits home for me. Coaches, if you do have any questions, go ahead and jump in, unmute yourself or put them in the chat. If you want to get involved and share the discussion, you can do that right now. And then coming up tomorrow night will be Coach Sharbs. He'll be he's the O-line coach at Roosevelt University in Chicago, and he'll be talking O-line skills and drills and kind of his coaching style. But Coach Scott, just taking a look, making sure we're not missing any questions. Lots of great comments on here. You know, it's interesting, Coach Rogers' comment on he'd be a much better assistant coach now, having been a head coach, right? With all the stuff that you learn along the way. You know, that's one of the truer things I've heard today. So that's fantastic. But I appreciate you coming on, Scott. And hopefully we get this season rocking and we can start implementing some of this. But appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Thank you.